We're on air, I think. I'll share.
Seems slow. Let's see.
Sorry. There we go.
Excellent. I see we're online as well. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, guys.
Kevin?
So I'm getting double talk. Am I meant to be speaking now? No, it's you, Torsten. Sorry.
Oh.
Welcome to this webinar on fundraising for those of you watching out there. For those of you watching after the webinar has concluded, welcome to you as well, of course. We hope to be productive today and give you some insight into what we've been working on the task force on fundraising. So perhaps you'd like to introduce us, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. So I might just give a brief rundown, firstly, of all of the members of the task force. So this is being led by Joachim Bergman, our VPF of IFMSA, who isn't here at the moment. He's at the team officials meeting in Morocco at the moment. And then myself, I'm from AMC Ireland. I'm the current president of AMC Ireland. Emra Pereira is the president of IFMSA Spain. Torsten here is from IMCC Denmark. Torsten, your position with IMCC is just general.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then Marie Claire is from Sake, Kenya. Marie, are you the president this year as well, I think?
Immediate former president.
Immediate former president there. And then Gabriel Lavoie from IFMSA Quebec as well. So there's 6 members of the task force, and we have a general structure that was set out from the March meetings. So it was formed in the last day of plenary in Montenegro, with a structure that has a couple of guidelines set out for the coming months. And we hope to have some nicely packaged framework and guidelines by this coming August meeting. So I'm just going to give a general kind of summary of what the purpose of this webinar is and kind of what we hope to gain from it. So you would have got an email, NMO presidents, and hopefully it was shared around NMOs last week, looking for input into a survey. So this was shared on I think it was the 24th of April. And this is a 3-week deadline. So its deadline is the 14th of May. And effectively what we're doing is that we asked 7 or 8 different questions, some detailed, some not so detailed, about what IFMSA should be working on with regard to fundraising and how NMOs can be a part of that. This kind of all came about from what might be construed as being a slightly inefficient system over the past couple of months, and kind of really what we're hoping to do is that NMOs can be more involved in the process, but also IFMSA in general can kind of be more of a cohesive fundraising body and can kind of utilize its resources, be that through its fantastic work and so on, but also through its sourcing of ethical fundraising. So it's kind of multifaceted, the reasoning about why this task force came about. With regard to this webinar itself, I'm not sure how many people are actually online watching, but regardless, this webinar we hope will be shared around a couple of different NMOs and kind of spark enthusiasm and dialogue between NMOs about the topic of fundraising, and to ensure that excuse me, we can get as much participation in this survey as we possibly can, because really the whole point of trying to get NMOs involved is that you actually do need to participate with the survey, because we're working very much off suggestions and input that we get. We've set a target of 51% participation from all NMOs. So we know that that's an ambitious total, but we think that it's definitely one that merits as higher percentage participation rate as that. Further, we've also said that we want as much regional representation with regard to the webinar as possible. So we hope that anybody here watching can ensure that either their compatriots or their fellow IFMSA members in neighbouring countries and so on to be as active in the survey as it possibly can, to ensure that it's as representative as I can. And we highly encourage you to share this webinar afterwards, especially if you think it's useful around your NMO. And yeah, so we're here for questions for the next while. Anyway, I think Emma, you're going to then go through the next part of.
Yep. Thank you, Kevin. So Kevin already went over a bit of the background on why this task force was created. But the current system now, where how we approve sponsorships, is the EB sort of goes on the sponsorship procurement, presents them at the GA, and NMOs have to vote on it. This system has been said to be inefficient because of the GAs are every 6 months, and this slows down the processes and makes it less flexible and less attractive to partners. So we would like to increase more flexibility in this and sponsorship procurements for FMSA in general, but also we think it's important to have NMO's input in regards to what we want to include in the sponsorship guidelines and etc. So the idea would be to create some sort of guidelines to guide how sponsorship procurements should be followed, and this would be with the survey that we just sent, and so we're hoping to get all your input in order to create this framework to guide future sponsorship procurements. As of now, the only guide that we have for getting sponsors is the policy statement on ethical finance, which you can see in the screen, and it basically mentions some institutions that are not compatible with the values and mission of the Federation, and so we can't accept funding from these institutions. We would like to make something more specific about sponsorship procurements. This is the second part of the policy statement. And then we're going to go over Torsten's going to go over the survey to see if there's some questions of what kind of input we're trying to gather from all of you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm just going to see whether or not I can share my screen for the call for input. Yes, it should be there. So essentially what we want to do with the call for input is, of course, to see and to know what you actually think about this initiative with regards to creating a framework on fundraising. So essentially to figure out how are we going to do this and what do we want to include in our framework so we know that we're doing fundraising the right way within our federation. So that's essentially what we want to do with regards to our survey, figure out what you think, what you feel is important, and what should be included. The call for input, if I'm not mistaken, it should show up on the screen. It has 11 questions with a couple of inspirational backgrounds on why we actually ask these questions. As Kevin rightly mentioned, we are very interested in regional representation within this fundraising effort and this framework effort. So we focus on that in the beginning of the survey, moving on to a focus on the current practices, because when it comes to fundraising, and anyone who's done fundraising knows that having procedures that work is essential, and actually using what you know to be working in your other aspects is important as well. Sort of, we have a saying in Danish where you shouldn't invent the plate if it's already invented. So don't do unnecessary work. So this question goes to our experiences and what we've observed actually works within your NMOs. The next one goes with in line with the expectation and thoughts on actually having fundraising. Like why do we do it, and why is it so important that we're financially stable in order to conduct our activities? So again, this essentially tries to delve into what you as NMOs feel would be important to have within a framework for fundraising. The next one deals with our objectives and visions for fundraising, because fundraising, believe it or not, can be quite involving, although some might imagine it's sitting around writing applications after applications. That's not true. Fundraising is essentially saying what you can collaborate with, what you believe in, what are your visions, what is your mission in this world. Fundraising should reflect that, such as we do it currently in the Federation, saying we do not support weapons manufacturers, so our fundraising strategy reflects that. That's why we want to envision a way in which we want our sponsors to be, are those that we do not want to work with and those we do want to work with, so as to see how and who we should actually fundraise from. So that includes a part down here that actually mentions the separate parts of controversial industries that are essentially not agreed, or that might not be agreed, depending on what your NMO, of course, feels. This is based on your input with regards to what you think is acceptable and what you don't think is acceptable. The next part deals with you, which is the most important part of the framework. We of the task force are basically just here to facilitate the discussion on fundraising framework and efforts. The NMO inclusion is essential for us to work forward, and how it concretely plays out is how do you want to be involved? Because as we've seen before, it can seem as a both inefficient process as well as a very non-transparent process into how these applications for fundraising actually function and play out. And then when we show up at the GAs, we're presented with these fundraising applications, and more often than not, there is a degree of wasted work within that. So before I go into too far into that, this deals with how do you want to be involved. Finally, we have sort of the outlook, the reflection that we would also like to investigate with regards to this process. Because as you know, we live in a changing world, and what works one day might not work the next day. So we want to draw upon the experiences that we know that you have as NMOs, and see whether or not you have any local fundraising initiatives that we might utilize in IFMSA globally, and so to let each help each other actually build a financially stable NMO as well as a financially stable federation. So essentially in this question we want to ask, what do you already do on a local basis that you think might be able to be implemented on a global scale? Sort of an inspiration to us and how we might proceed. Finally, adding in any comments on whether or not our questions are too long, or whether you feel we didn't include enough pictures or something. So that's it, and we really, and I must emphasize that, hope that you fill out this survey, because it is the way in which we might gain input and gain insight into what is actually going on right now, and how we create this framework that satisfy you, the NMOs, and us as a federation. So that is in overview our current form of the survey, and I do hope you will fill it out. The deadline is the 14th of May, as has been said before. And that was it with regards. Is it your turn, Emma?
Yeah, thank you, Torsten. Are we back to the screen on the presentation? Or?
I will.
There
Yes. Okay, excellent.
All right, so as I forgot to mention it before, but in the ethical funding policy statement, it is included that all sponsorship procurements have to be in parallel to the mission and vision of IFMSA and its values. So we want to give you a brief overview of what our current policy statements and policy documents are, so we can also be coherent when we create this framework with our values as a federation. Here you can see the public health issue policy statements that we have right now. You can access all of them in the ifmsa.org website. Here is the medical education issues and sexual and reproductive health issues policy statements. And then we have human rights and peace and global and organizational policy statements. So these would be a reflection of the current values that we have as of now. And this, once we create a framework with all your input, we believe it is important to be coherent with these values. And now on to Torsten again for how we want to involve you as NMOs in this sponsorship procurement after the framework is created.
Excellent. Thank you, Emma. So essentially, well, I've already used that word too much, but bear with me. What we want to do with this framework is, of course, to create a foundation for actual fundraising efforts for us within the federation, so we know what we're doing and we know how we want things. That's sort of what lies behind the objectives of the task force on fundraising. But we cannot do it without you, as I've said before. We need the involvement of the NMOs, and how we're doing it right now is this first step, our survey. Of course, you're always welcome to send us your input in a non-formalized form, but the survey is the first step in order to make a framework on ethical fundraising. From that, we'll take your input and structure a process in which we can involve you better, but it all depends on that first step with regards to the survey. As it is now, with regards to our plans and timeline, we get that input and then we try to make a framework based on what we actually hear, what we learn, what we experience via the survey. And then from that, we create a consultation process where we send what we have out to you to review it, see whether or not it's something you're satisfied with. And hopefully, or what we're expecting will happen, is that we will have created a framework before the GA in Tanzania, and then we'll have it ratified at the GA, or well, not ratified, we'll have it accepted at the GA, so we know in which way we actually want to do this fundraising. Because as it is now, and as some of you might know, it's everything we do must be drawn out, so we can only act on fundraising efforts essentially at the GAs, because everything must be done there. That was an off topic. The essential part to focus on here is that we want to make an inclusive and open process with you involved, and in order to do that, we need your input via the survey. And from there, we'll structure a process that includes you in whatever way you actually want to be included. So I think that sums out with regards to NMO involvement. Have I forgotten anything, Emma?
No, I think it's good. We'll take some questions now for those of you who are present in this webinar. If not, to the thread that we'll be sending to the webinar, and any questions or further input you may have.
Excellent. And of course, if you don't get the chance to ask the questions right now, or for those of you listening after the webinar has concluded, you're always welcome to contact us within the task force. Yeah.
So 1 minute more for questions, and
yes,
if there aren't any. questions in 3, 2, 1? No? All right, well, that seems to be it. It's a pretty short webinar, so I think that would be easy to watch and go over it. So thank you all who are watching, and thank you guys for presenting. And we're always welcoming any further input, and please fill out the survey. It is very important for in order to create this framework with your input.
Thank you to our Bulgarian friends for their nice comment. And if anybody is watching this after the time, please, we just want to reiterate that if you can share it with your NMO and other NMOs in your region, and to ensure as much participation as possible. Again, we're just focusing on that 51% participation target to make this as representative and as concrete going forward as we possibly can. So this is a framework that's not just for the next couple of months, the next couple of years, but for many, many years into the future when we're all old, graying, and still beautiful.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.